me and he said, hey, can you help me now? Because I've raised money and everything was set, but then these developers sort of. So what I did was I got a few guys who didn't pay our electricity bills even. So there came a time in later that year in December where there was a strong contemplation on shutting the company down. And my thing was that we don't want to be laid off twice in the same year, So I asked for about 4 months, saying that, and they asked, what are you going to do? And I said, well, we created an RPG game. We're sitting in Hyderabad in a bedroom where our office was, right? And I said, we're trying to sort of deliver a product to audiences largely from North America or Southeast Asia, and it's very difficult for us to create something sitting in India, not being able to relate to that. So let's create a cricket game. I've done it before. I understand the sport. And let's see what happens. 4 months shouldn't be too hard or too long a time. So we started production 3rd of January 2014, and the first version on Android came out in April. That was Real Cricket 14. It was a 2D based game, right? And so within a month or so, we were getting traction. We got picked up by the Google Play guys. We invited to their office, which happened to be right next door to where our little bedroom studio was. And they featured us. They obviously asked us to make a few changes. We did that. They featured us, and that's how we got that initial sort of spurt. And within a few months, we broke even, and then soon after, we've been profitable. I think we've been profitable ever since, really, if you have to look at it from that perspective. We used the same engine. It was a 2D game, Coco's 2D, right, is what we used. And so that was the engine of choice till, say, 2017. But we soon found that, our competitors were sort of getting ahead of us. They were already built 3D games much ahead of us. And I thought we'd done whatever we could with the game engine at that point. So that's when we decided to make our first 3D game, which was Real Cricket 18, built in Unity. We still use Unity. But 2019 was, again, a pretty large moment for us because we created the multiplayer experience in Real Cricket for the first time. And then 2020, we sold our company to Jet Synthesis. 19, I met Rajan Navani, great man, great ambition. I thought, I'd learned already whatever I could with the current set of promoters that we had. And I thought that, the Jet ecosystem could offer us a lot more. In 2020, we were acquired by Jet Synthesis. And within, say, another year and a half or two, I think, we raised a strategic investment from Crafton. So, and now we have Real Cricket 24. We did a massive esports tournament on the back of it, and then the now recently announced the partnerships, which only would have been probably a dream, when we started in 14.
Very cool. So you've essentially gone from having to convince your parents that I'm not wasting my time in video games to actually pioneering cricket and video games in India. That's pretty cool, yeah. I think one of the things I wanted to shift your focus towards now is the larger industry and the gaming market as well, right? So you've successfully captured the attention of a massive audience with Real Cricket. Can you shed some light on what makes the Indian gaming audience unique and how you've approached monetizing Real Cricket? And maybe, some of that in the context of your recent partnerships with the IPL teams. Give me a moment to just elaborate on that a bit, right? Because most game developers that I spoke to of late are of the opinion that India is great for cost efficiencies, but your market and your audience sits in the West. Higher CPMs, higher transaction rates, higher whatever, per transaction values, etc. You've broken that stereotype. You've built a game for cricket, which is largely an Indian sport. Of course, there are Indians abroad as well, which I would assume are part of your customer base. How do you tackle this, this stereotype that Indians don't pay, you can't make games for Indian consumers?
Look, I think I'll go a little bit, back into about 10 years ago, right, when we started. It all comes down to the vision and the reason why we sort of created Real Cricket. There has to be a reason why you create something, right? It can be your vision, it can be your ambition, whatever, but that needs to be a strong rationale. When we started off, our vision was, can we create the FIFA equivalent for cricket on mobile, right? That was the vision back then. I do agree with some of the points that you raised that, India is not the best in terms of, the ARPU, etc. It still isn't, right? But when we started, we had a very strong belief that things will change, right? 10 years ago, right? Um, we were probably the number one cricket game at that point of time as well for a short while, but we would have DAOs of 50K, right? On and that would be number one, right? Today it's 2 million, 2.5 million, right? And it's happened slowly over a period of time, right? So there was a time when majority of our we practically had no IAP revenue, right? A few percent, single digit percentage. That has changed massively, as a result of digitization, as a result of the people's bandwidths increasing in terms of the internet connectivity, all of those things, right? What we believe, and this is again rolling down to today where we are, with the partnerships that we've announced, it is all going down from that vision, right? So we continue to believe. I still feel that we're 30% through in our journey, and I think the audience there will be this moment, where things really change in terms of the way the Indian consumer consumes, right? It is changing. The battle royale genre has sort of shown that it is possible. But I think with sports games, etc., I think it'll take a little longer. And in terms of what kind of audience we have, other than the hesitance to pay, etc., right? I think I kind of agree. But I think with people sort of with the economy growing stronger, right? People having more disposable income, I think all of those things will change. And I think that as we continue to build better and better products, it's not that the Indian user doesn't pay, right? But he's paying for quality content which is provided by international powerhouses, right? And I think our efforts as an Indian game developer is how soon can we get to that standard or that quality of a product. And I'm sure that once we get there, right, we will see that drastic change. And I think that's what's happened with our game as well, right? Like as the product got better, our monetization got better, right? So yeah, I hope. I mean, it's a quite elaborate question, right? But we spent like half an hour on this.
Fair enough. No, I agree with you. I think there's a lot to unpack over there. So let me try and make this a little more pointed, right? So let's talk monetization for real cricket. You said that you started at a time when there was no IAP. Then it went into single digits, and today it makes a significant portion of your revenues as well. Other than the macro context of Indians now opening up to the fact that there's something worth paying for on the internet and in games, how are you delivering more and more value to your customers to get a larger share of their wallet, right? What kind of features or what kind of brainwaves have you guys had in the team that says, aha, this is what really delivers value to my customers or cricket fans in India?
So, look, I think as a part and parcel of sports games, right, the most important basic fundamental when you're designing a sports title is that it should be massively replayable, right? And so it all starts at the very core levels of game design. That you need to create a game, and I sort of have a very famous sentence which people in the team often repeat back to me, and I said that our game, when we create it, even the developer should not know what's going to happen on the next one, right? Because that's the level of unpredictability that you need for a game to be truly dynamic, and sports games in particular need to be dynamic because it's essentially you're playing the same thing, right? But just multiple number of times. So that is one. Second is content, right? Because that's what fuels most sports games. So even I mentioned FIFA or Pro Evolution or NBA, right? You have your career modes, you have your tournaments, you have when you're in this simulation space in particular, when you're sort of trying to drive realism, right? There are a lot of real world events happening from which you can sort of why do people play simulation games? I mean, the whole thesis of being a simulation game, right? So if you remember, right, when you were a kid, you would roam around with a gun in your hand thinking you're someone from the army, right? What were you doing? Essentially, that simulation, right? You're trying to do what you otherwise won't be able to do in real life. And that's the genesis of why people play all these sports games, is because, with football, you'll never be Cristiano Ronaldo, right? So you at least get a chance here to be him in the game of your choice in football. And similarly, we see higher traction periods when the IPL is going on or the World Cup's going on. We'll want to sort of Mumbai is playing Rajasthan, and Mumbai loses, and the Mumbai fan comes into our game, becomes Mumbai and beats Rajasthan. It's all of those things, right? So that's what we've tried to deliver. In terms of content, in terms of experience, these partnerships sort of signify that. And you mentioned, the IPL partnerships. I mean, the three teams, and we've also actually announced another one where we've sort of signed up with the WCA, which is the World Cricketers Association, through Fitness Alliance, who's our partner, where we have access to another, 450 players potentially from, all countries other than India, pretty much. And those will also sort of start coming into the game. And so the idea has always been to provide a product which can sort of provide what you see on the telly, on your phones, and let you sort of control it. And as a result of that, content, team building, through multiplayer is a great sort of reference point because it's a peer-to-peer, sort of emotion that you're creating, and you always want to beat the opponent, so you want to build the strongest team that you have. So these are the ways in which we sort of try to manufacture, things in a way that the audience would sort of be would.
Right. Real cricket is a game that has a lot of depth and a lot of nuance to the gameplay, and you've already captured a significant portion of that audience. So how are you addressing this gap, if at all, to capture the casual Indian gaming audience?
Right, good question. So, the thing is, one of the USPs or, what differentiates real cricket in general, and, has been, and we've never tried to really move away from that, is the fact that, the game does have a little bit of a difficulty curve, right? And, to be really good at the game, you need immense amount of skill. Our players during the GAPL, etc., we have our top 100 players that we have. I couldn't beat them. I mean, they're really good, right? And that's been the differentiator. But what I think we've done is, along the way, in our whole effort to maintain we've always wanted to make an esportable title, right? That was one of our ambitions as well. So in an effort to do that, I think we've sort of also feel that we've alienated, like you rightly said, some of the more casual players who just want to come in, enjoy it. As when you're watching telly, it's not everybody who's, complete nerd when it have a watch, enjoy themselves and go. And so in order to address that, we actually, and this is the first time I probably will be saying this, but we're actually going to be launching a new game, right, called Real Cricket Swipe. Now, what that is essentially, it is real cricket, right? So we're not taking away from anything that Real Cricket 24 has, for instance, right? It'll have the same amount of depth, it'll have all of that content, but we've completely, overhauled the game mechanics, created new ball physics, simpler controls, right? So in Real Cricket 24, for instance, you need to know exactly, which shot you've assigned onto your D-pad, and, the shot selection is key to you doing well. And that is hard for a few people, right? Unless you're like absolutely grinding it, you can't perfect it. So we've taken care of those things. We've created a custom difficulty. So in a way, you can literally design your own AI in the game to suit yourself as well. So that'll give you multiple outcomes. It'll also, sort of tweak the game's difficulty as per your needs. So the game is literally built, to sort of target that audience who we might have alienated along the way, and sort of bring them into the real cricket universe, and, for them to experience that, hey, this is what we've built, right? And this is what you were missing out on because we made the game a little too challenging, right? So the two games are sort of designed to coexist because, Real Cricket 24 is sort of more suited towards the typical, RC users who've been there in the system for quite a long time, and Real Cricket Swipe is created more, for so-called the newer players, who sort of didn't like RC because it was a little too complicated for them. But both the games will have the same amount of depth. Both the games will have the same amount of priorities, right? Content will be, sort of moving across both the sides. So that's the way we intend to address that point of yours.
Very cool. Glad to hear it. I was actually expecting something a little more like, hey, we're adding a couple of modes in the game, but you guys have just picked the new game. So, any timelines around when this is going to come out?
So the beta should come out, say about in another month.
Okay. Sounds good. Looking forward to that one. Right. Yeah. Let's dive deep into the process of building a game like yours. Right. So, obviously,
which is still with me, majority of it. They were all my Gameloft colleagues. Right? For some, I was their first boss. I continue to be their boss. So the bonds. Our initial days, we were using Coco Studio from a engine perspective. So our programmers were sort of had to be skilled in C++, that language in particular. But when we moved to Unity now, it's more C#. So the good part for us is that we have our core group of programmers who are skilled in both. Right. So tomorrow, if we have to use another engine of choice, that is a possibility and something that we can explore. In terms of the art side, for animations and modeling, we use Maya. And for basic texturing and 2D art, right? We use Photoshop and Substance Painter as well.
Interesting. So, and what would you say your team size is like, right?
Right now we've just crossed the 50 mark. Just about.
So let me understand, you're doing over $2.5 million with a team of just 50 folks, and you're pumping out new franchises and new games with just a 50-person team.
Yeah.
It's super. So yeah, I think it goes to show you don't need like super bloated teams. You need to find the right crew and have them sort of focus on your core product or your core value proposition, and then try and build out from there. Is that the lesson to take away from you?
Absolutely, and I think I learned that very early when I was in Gameloft and in Synqua as well. So typically, even in large studios like Gameloft for mobile games, the core creation team, so as to speak, right, is quite small. Is created. That team is kept very small, so that the creation team only creates the Gold Master, and then it's sort of sent out, because Gameloft has the privilege of another 400 guys in one studio. We don't. But yeah, the creation teams, in my opinion, should be smaller. That way things are more controlled, you're more nimble, people are more focused, don't get lost in the crowd.
We have a newsletter, and I'm not really selling anything because it's free. We have a newsletter. It's called Pixel PNL. Every weekday you will get a quick industry update, everything that's going on in the game dev, gaming, esports, and youth culture industries, along with an introduction to a feature story of the day. The feature stories are behind the paywall, but you don't need to subscribe to that if you don't want to. Do sign up for the newsletter. Back to the discussion with Anuj. So Anuj, now you talked about having a lean team, talked about having a hyper focus on what you really love and building in-house, right? What does your development process look like? How important are things like feedback loops? How do you approach getting feedback and implementing it into your game? Things like beta testing and continuous improvement, right? How does this work in real cricket and in office?
So, now we're blessed with, millions of users, right? We have a pretty active social channels, Instagram, Facebook, all of that, right? So feedback is coming in every day in the millions. So we're not too stressed about that now. But when we started, it was initially more about what we wanted to create and what kind of experience we wanted to provide. And yes, then there was obviously feedback that came in from the app stores, the experts at the app stores, the editors there. Today, when we sort of launch a game, we definitely look at the reviews. We definitely look at what's coming in on the direct DMs on Instagram, what's coming in from Facebook Messenger. We do pay attention to all of those things. We also have an internal QA team, a playtesting team that sort of tells us, how the experience is. We play it ourselves. So I think where it comes is, well, for bugs and all of that, because when you're catering to, we cater to devices right from 2 GB RAM devices all the way up, right? So there are a plethora of devices out there, which unfortunately we don't test on each one of them, right? That is where we sort of use our audience and the dev console a lot to get certain issues which happen only on typical devices, they won't happen otherwise. We sort of lean on the audience and lean on the Google Play console quite a bit to understand those things. For the rest of it, we more than feedback, it's always a wish list that comes to us. But I think there's some comments there. Look, so
yeah, they're gonna keep coming. We'll address those at the end. But yeah, I see what you mean.
yeah. So that's just a preview of what my inbox would look like if everyone knew my phone number.
For a small price, maybe we could get that to you. No, I'm just kidding, guys. Anuj, next thing I wanted to talk about is esports, right? So you've got GEPL. I think you've done 2 seasons now of GEPL.
Second is about to happen. Yeah.
Right. Now, my understanding of esports has always been that sports games ironically don't make for good viewing experiences as an esport, right? People would much rather watch football than watch someone else play FIFA. Is this a challenge that you face as well with real cricket? And how are you addressing this, or how are you building your esports narrative around this?
So you're absolutely right. Like, that is definitely a challenge that every sports game is going to have, right? What we tried to do with GEPL is, we sort of changed the format completely, right? We had, instead of just a 1v1 or a 2v2, right, we had teams of 5, of 6 actually, competing with each other. And so, we had a stage put up where, say for instance, if you're in the team, you batted yourself. So we created Nishant in the game, right? In the jersey that he was in, whichever team he was representing, right? That's the jersey you would be in. You would come and play on the so-called pitch that we had created, right? So you and your non-striker are out there, and there is the bowler on the other side with his captain. Right? And the moment you get out, you get up just like you would in the actual sport, walk away to your dugout, and the next player would come in. Right? We did this, just to add that extra thrill and that, the whole individuality. You could play as literally yourself in the game. And from our experience, when the finals happened in Balewadi Stadium, a lot of the crowd were women and children. And they were clapping, and I remember a semi-final which resulted in a tie, right? So it was absolutely thrilling. They were clapping, and the only advantage where I see with cricket, and particularly in our region, right, the Indian subcontinent, is if someone was to watch Dota or Valorant, right, like from the common man's perspective, they wouldn't understand it. Right. I remember once interacting with Boman Irani, the great actor, during one of the Valo events that I think Sky had put up, and Sky Esports, that is. And he was asking me, like, what is this? What's happening? Constantly, right? So it becomes a little bit hard from a viewer perspective, a person who's not playing. Right. So whilst, yes, sports games obviously have that challenge that the real sport is always there to be watched, I think other games also have a challenge, which is, people who don't play it actively, they don't understand it. So it goes both ways. I mean, this is the challenge with esport. It goes both ways. And I think which is where certain games like Counter-Strike become more successful from a viewer perspective, because it's so obvious, everyone understands what's happening. But the way in which we are about to address this is, hey, everyone understands the sport of cricket, right? If we are able to come up with formats which, sort of signify the emotion, there is something larger at stake, I think there's always going to be interest in that category. And we're still building. It's been, about 3 years that we've sort of forayed into the whole e-cricket space. And we know that it is our responsibility to build that. And our ambition as Nautilus, as Jet, is we always end up playing games created by international developers. Esports happen on those games. We want to be India's first export to the world in terms of esports, and I think who better than India, and what better sport than cricket to take outside, right? Because we sort of understand our number one at it, even in the real sport. So I feel that that's something that drives us is again, like, the game is 100% made in India, right, by Indians, non-violent, right? Again, this is all basics, like the family
checks all the boxes.
Checks all the boxes, right? And hopefully we're able to innovate. We're able to sort of provide a better viewing experience. We've actually one of the first, I would think, Indian game companies to have a esports client, right? Many people don't even know what that is, right? And I think I'll leave to you to sort of explain what an esports client is. But we already have an esports client 2 years ago, right? Because when 22, 24 was being made, this constantly interacting with the stalwarts of the Indian esports scene. I was having conversations with Akshat, I was conversation with Gautam, I was having conversations with Shiva, and all of them were like, telling me that I think GPL last year, at least from a viewing experience, was quite fun.
Very cool. No, well said on the both sides of both type of games have their own set of problems they've got to tackle, right? GPL. Do you think there is an avenue to be built, or at least an opportunity for folks that are physically unable? Am I audible, visible now?
Yeah, you are.
Yeah. So I think my question here was, are we okay? Should I continue?
Not yet, no.
Let's give it a moment. Right, while Anuj reconnects, let me take this moment once again to refresh your memories. We have our newsletter subscriptions open. Up, Pixel PNL, daily newsletter. You get your daily digest of all things gaming, esports, and youth culture. I guarantee you it will be useful for anyone that's looking to break into the industry or just keep up to date with the latest trends. For those of you that are just tuned in, we've got Anuj from Real Cricket. He's the founder and CEO of Nautilus Mobile, the Real Cricket franchise. Anuj, are you back with us?
Yes, just some tech issues.
No worries. All right, so yeah, I think my question was paraplegics, people that are physically unable to play sports. Do you see Real Cricket esports as a sort of substitute for them to start, building a name for themselves as athletes?
Brilliant, because you mentioned that because when we have our top 64 players last year as well, and some who eventually played in the top 48 and got selected and put in the teams, we had a player who represented the Mumbai team. Last year he's lost both his feet, both his legs. One of the top players in the tournament, right? There was a player I think in the Delhi team with one eye, and again a top player. He's won several smaller Real Cricket tournaments before. So I definitely feel that this puts everyone on a level playing field. Everyone is able to sort of pursue their passion of the sport electronically, and we've seen that as a live example. And I come down for the next season, where I'm sure all of these players will be chosen again because they just work so hard at their game, and you'll see how passionate, how brilliant they all are. And despite their various handicaps, when they play real cricket, there is no handicap, right? In fact, if you play them, you might feel handicapped.
They'd kick my ass. I have no doubt about it. No, I love this. This for all the hatred that video games get in the news media and in the mainstream media especially, right? It's heartwarming stories like these that tend it. I think you guys and your game are doing some fantastic work on that. So kudos to you.
Thank you.
Right, let me come to the last part of this session, right? And I'd probably say it's the most inspiring or the most important one, right? Lessons for aspiring game developers. Now, Anuj, based on your experience, what skills do you think are critical for those looking to enter the game development industry in India? That's my first question, and then I'll answer follow-ups.
I think first thing is to sort of figure out which function you want to be part of, right? Because when you say I want to enter game development, there are various roles within game development, right? Various functions, so as to speak. So you can is it coding and programming that you enjoy, or is it are you from an artistic background who sort of wants to create either concept art or texturing or modeling or animations, or do you want to be more on the production side, game design side, and I think that first first making up your mind as to where your interests lie is important, right? Because say, for instance, someone like me decided, oh, I love gaming, I'm going to become a game developer, and I'm going to become a programmer. That's it. This call wouldn't happen because I would have made a pathetic programmer. I studied the fundamentals of programming. I do understand it now, but I don't have what it takes to be a programmer, right? So understanding where you want to go is the first step. The second step is also understanding that playing games is not equal to making games. They're completely different, right? Unlike a sport where you say, oh, I love playing cricket, I want to be a cricketer. For the rest of your life, you will play cricket, right? Here it's different. I love playing games. I want to make games. No, you will not play games for the rest of your life. You will make games for the rest of your life, right? That's the key difference there. And understanding that is very important because otherwise you just get in and, 2-3 years down the line, you sort of, would have to go back and start doing your homework again, start from zero. So now depending on whether you want to be a programmer, if you want to be a programmer, I think, your computer engineering background is a good start, and then there is so much information today on the internet, right? Free information, YouTube being number one, where you can practically understand the fundamentals of any game engine on your own, right? Through those tutorials, videos, conference videos as well. I mean, conference videos comes a little later because, that's a little step 2 kind of thing, but so much knowledge available on YouTube, so much knowledge available on, things like Udemy, Coursera, where if you want a more guided sort of approach, I think if you're able to do that along with your basic academics, that's a great start. Your fundamentals being strong in your core programming languages, being C, C++, C#. I don't recommend anyone goes and starts learning only C sharp, right? I would prefer if the person's foundations are strong with C, then you learn C++ and C sharp. It just makes you a very good all-round programmer moving forward. So that's on the programming side. Now, if you want to go into the art side, if you are a concept artist or 2D artist, it's important that, you've got a good hand first and foremost. One should be able to realize if they do or not. Fine art background, a lot of artists today, if I look at from an Indian artist perspective, they're from a fine arts background, moving on to, the Photoshop, learning Photoshop well enough, understanding, that software sort of, takes them places. If you're a modeler, knowing 3D Max, 3D or Maya, I think that's a great start, and the same is the case with animation. So, and if you want to do something like game design, right, this is the complex one. If you want to do something like game design, obviously understanding games in different ways, not just, playing and having fun, but I think when you're playing those games, to sort of keep deconstructing the game in your head, whilst you're at it, I think that's a great start. And whilst there is no formal qualification to be a game designer, I think you would be smart to start at the QA side, because what that does is it makes you a part of the production cycle. You learn quite a bit. You're working with other people, you're working with developers, you're working with producers, you're working with game designers there. And then you'll sort of start picking up the skills and the requirements and start slowly tuning your brain to think in that particular direction.
Awesome, very insightful. Now, the next question I had on this topic was, and you already touched upon this a little bit, right? There's a lot of free knowledge out there through Coursera, Udemy, and even YouTube for that matter. Are there any specific resources that you've relied on or that you recommend for learning and staying updated with the latest trends?
So I've never been a book person myself, right? Books sort of put me to sleep. I guess that's the reason why I chose something with computers all around me. So reading is something I always do when I'm in bed because it puts me to sleep really quickly. So I don't recommend any books. I think myself as well, I've learned a lot. I have a great interest in game design, great interest in art direction, understanding how shaders get made, all of those things. But I learned all of that through the 3 channels I told you about, right? I've never done Udemy and Coursera, but YouTube, I think I've relied on YouTube for a lot, right? And I think there is so much there, so much information there. Like today, if you want to learn something, you just have to freaking type what you want to learn, and YouTube will have a plethora of information out there. They're also a little bit, if you have to go into a little advanced level, right, is going and just spending some time in the forums. There's so many forums depending on what it is. Like if there is 3ds Maya or 3ds Max, Maya, there's dedicated forums there, right, where you can spend a lot of time and learn quite a few things, because people will put their experiences there, their problems there. Someone else will provide solutions, and I think that's the best learning you can have, because those are real world problems that you will post in the forums, which you might encounter in your day-to-day life. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe 6 months from now, but because you've read it, and if someone's provided a solution already, you can go and provide that to the team, and that's very helpful. It saves hours and days sometimes.
Fantastic. All right, I'm going to put a quick summary around this for the aspiring devs in the chat, right? First off, you've got to learn, don't try to be a programmer when you're clearly meant to be an artist, and vice versa. And as far as learning goes, everyone has their own medium. Anuj himself is not a book person. I am. Some others may or may not be. But there is so much free information available on the internet, and I completely agree with you. YouTube is the entry point for any sort of learning, in my opinion, too. So I think that's one thing that most netizens already know how to do well. Just get online, type, hey, I want to learn XYZ, end up on a YouTube video and go down that rabbit hole. You'll eventually learn something which may or may not be useful to you. Before we get to closing remarks, I have to open the Q&A. Let me just summarize all the game-related questions first and throw it at you, right? And then we can move on to what a few stakeholders have asked. When career mode? When 2v2? Why no Tamil, Telugu, Kannada commentary yet? And I missed anything? I think I've got it. These are the 3 ones.
So 2v2 will be part of RC Swipe maybe next year, early next year, or say about May-ish, right? In terms of career mode, I'm still not happy with the designs that we've come up with internally. That, along with the fact that all these partnerships happen to come, right? And I sort of always believe that real cricket now, from a gameplay perspective, has gotten to a certain stage, and now we need to move to the next level in our ambition to become the FIFA equivalent for cricket. So we spent a lot of our focus there. We will continue to do that within at least whatever's left of this year. So no definitive answer there. I know it's missing. It has been plaguing me as well. But I've mentioned this earlier as well, that when we do career mode, right, we want to be like no other game has done before. We want to be different, provide an experience which, is almost real cricket-esque in a way, because, we've done the auction when no one did it. We also want to do the career mode in a way that no one else has done it. So it will come. It is part of our priority. It's just that I always believe, there can be a lot of ideas, but an idea is only as good as it's executable or executed, right? And as of now, we have a lot of ideas, figuring out the execution and the right design.
Super. The next 3 questions come from Ali Hassan. Question is, what tools and technologies do your developers use for game graphics and animation?
Just before that, I think I missed one question about Tamil, Telugu commentary.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, that's something that is something that I can commit to. It will come within the next 3 months.
Awesome. Right. Back to Ali's question. What tools and technologies do your devs use for game graphics and animation?
Game graphics and animation, like I said, let's break down graphics first, right? So in a 3D game, you have a model, right? And within the model, you have a skeleton, which is then used, called the rig, which is then used for animation, right? So the modeling and the rigging and the skinning and the animation happens in Maya for us, right? 3D Maya for us. In terms of the texturing, that is what you see on top, right? Which gives the character the definition. In our case, the color of the kids, etc. So that's called texturing. We use either Substance Painter or Photoshop for that. In terms of the engine from a development standpoint, we use Unity as of now. And for our backend coding and servers and all of that, right, we use Azure.
Okay, and I think his next. So you've answered the one about whether or not you use Unreal Engine or you built your own engine for RC24, right?
Yeah.
Which AI models are you using for AI NPC players, if at all you are using it?
No, so we're not using any sort of pre-made models or such. We sort of design our own AI. We've come from, we're a little bit ancient from that perspective, because we started very early. So we've sort of always built with years to come and sort of use those libraries and that intelligence and data into creating our own AIs and sort of, because they're working, right? Today, I think one would not dispute that from a gameplay perspective, out of the others, Real Cricket is one of the best. So it's working for us. So as of now, we've not, delved into any existing AI models because AI has been a very recent sort of thing. So we will probably look at them in the future, see what else we can do.
Awesome. Okay. The other interesting one that I've got is, and this is more of an interview question of sorts from Viral Suthar. Where do you see the Real Cricket franchise in 5 years?
We will be releasing a beta of a new game, Real Cricket Swipe, which for the first time, and kudos to AFK for that, which is being announced here on this podcast. Like I said, it will coexist with Real Cricket 24. So don't worry, Real Cricket 24 users. If you prefer Real Cricket 24, there is nothing to worry about. This is more for in an effort from our side to open up that RC universe to a lot more users. And if we're able to do that, I believe the collaborations that we spoke about, those collaborations can extend to other teams, leagues, and we will have a game that will be unprecedented.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Anuj. Have an amazing day and all the best.
All right, thanks.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.